Hey everyone, so it's my first recording in June, so we're now in Pride Month, and I thought it'd be a good time to talk about a couple stats and thoughts I had around the LGBTQ community. And I think the important thing here is to involve some facts. I think everyone kind of has their opinion. Personally, I'm very pro acceptance. I think there's obviously a range spectrum. I think right now there's definitely a divide between traditional gay and lesbian versus transgender and different gender identities. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think that at first, I just want to kind of talk about the history of where we've come and are we making progress, right? So let me pull up my browser. Let's start with views on acceptance. Let me make sure this loaded. Yep. So this, you can look at this map. It's the percentage that say homosexuality to be accepted by society. In America, we're at 72%, a little bit lower than Canada, 85, a little bit higher than Mexico at 69. You can look kind of, a lot of Europe is in the dark along with Australia, so kind of people that you would expect to be a little bit more socially progressive. We're approaching around 90%. That dwanes as you kind of get to Eastern Europe, Asia. It seems like, Asia is pretty low still. Think China is actually just, there's no data. There's not a lot of data on places that are fully just white, right? Or there's 0%. It might not be 0%, but they just don't have data. But you can see there's a definite trend towards going east that it is less accepted. And then actually there's been a lot of progress in Japan and South Korea. So this graph I also find interesting because it shows the rise in acceptance over the last 2 decades. So I see a lot of progress in a lot of areas. Japan went from 54 to 68. Most countries similar, about a 15 to 20 point scale. The U.S. in the last 20 years, although it seems like this is up till 2019, went up a full 21%. Um, you know, Kenya, I guess, noticeable for going from 1 to 14. India over doubling, 15 to 37. So that's definitely great to see. There's progress there. I think there's also a big question as to how much that has changed in the last 3 years. I don't know how fast things move, but I know that there's been a lot of issues lately. Then let's talk about transgender and gender identities. So the headline here is pretty interesting. It says complex views on gender identity, transgender issues. Most favor protecting trans people from discrimination, but fewer support policies related to medical care for gender transitions. Many are uneasy with the pace of change on trans issues. So this is one thing I think that's important to distinguish when we talk about acceptance, is that there is definitely middle ground. A lot of people, I think, have created a binary where you either are pro something or against something. I don't think that's really how real life plays out. I understand emotionally it could feel like that, but I think there's a lot of people who say, hey, listen, I don't want to discriminate against trans people, but the ideas on what is discriminating is different. Is not letting someone into a locker room if they haven't had transgender surgery. Is that considered discrimination? Right? These are complex issues, and I think that they're worth having the discussion and giving them weight. So looking at this graph in specific, it says that percent saying they would allow laws and policies that would protect transgender people from discrimination in jobs, housing, public spaces. So a majority of Americans say they would support anti-discrimination laws, and a quarter say they wouldn't oppose, and only 10% say strongly oppose. So this is actually more than I expected. I thought there's actually significantly still transgender rejection. It seems that as far as getting a job, getting housing, being able to live your life normally, it doesn't seem that there is discrimination. Now, you could argue, is 64% a good or bad number? I'd say that for a lot of areas, you would say that's not a good number. That's not even close to 100%. I think given the pace at which that's changing, and again, given the nature of gender identity being such a central theme for so many people, I actually feel very positively about that. You can interpret it for yourself. And then the next one says percent saying whether a person is a man or a woman. Can that be different from the sex assigned at birth, or does it have to be determined at birth, right? So this actually is a very recent one. We just go from 2017 upwards to 2022, and you actually see the number going down, right? So people saying you could be assigned a different sex than at birth, 44 to 41 to 38%. So it's gone down 6%. and it's actually gone up the equal amount. So there's no middle ground. This adds up to 98. So I actually don't know where the missing 2% comes from, but it looks like the 6% added is equaled on the right side. But it definitely seems that there's actually been some regression as far as how do we view uh, a person's gender identity being able to be fluid after they've been born. The last one I want to look at is a very interesting Pew poll. It says young adults, Democrats more likely to say society hasn't gone far enough in accepting people who are transgender. That's the headline. The poll question itself, it says percent of society saying that society has, and then there's three options, has gone too far, not far enough, or been about right in accepting people who are transgender. So 38% of Americans say we've gone too far in accepting people. 36% say we have not gone far enough. 23% say we've been about right. And it's broken down by age. There's a really big divide between Republicans and Democrats here. That's not surprising to me. I guess actually the amount is somewhat surprising to me, but not the direction. Um, but I want to just look at the headline number. 38% say we've gone too far. 36% we haven't gone far enough. 23% we've been about right, right? So um, I guess it's very interesting to me. This is really where I want to talk about kind of some of the nuance, right? So here's one of the specific, they get into kind of the questions around what might break down these acceptance laws. So um, again, protecting from discrimination, all 64% say that they would strongly favor. Require that trans athletes compete on teams that match the sex they were assigned at birth. 58% support. So that's majorities, a slim majority there, but still majority. Make it illegal for healthcare professionals to help someone under 18 with medical care for gender transition. This is the really big one right now. Should minors be allowed to have either, depending on how you say it, gender affirming care is kind of the left positive term, sex change being the more traditional. And, I think you look at it and, 46%, so less than a majority, slim, barely there. Again, very big divides between Republicans and Democrats, 72% versus 26%. Requires trans individuals use public bathrooms that match the sex they were assigned at birth. This is starting to wane. Again, big divide, Republican, Democrat, but only 41% of adults say that. Make it illegal for public school districts to teach about gender identity in elementary schools, 41%. Investigate parents for child abuse as they help someone under 18 get medical care for gender transition, 37%. Require health insurance companies to cover medical care for gender transitions, 27%. This is a less than majority even among Democrats. This is the essential Democrat conundrum. I support this issue until it costs me money. So this is really where I think it's important, right? I think overall, I like to present stats so then I can start to make my statements with context. But I think that there is a acceptance that homosexuality, just that part of the LGBT, has gone up pretty remarkably, about 20%, and it's gone up pretty ubiquitously across every country. I don't think I saw any regressions in gay acceptance, and it's progressed even in much more traditionally socially conservative countries, right? Like South Korea and India. Again, socially conservative, it really differs on what the issues are, but in that regard, they have gone up. So that's happened, and then we have the transgender issue, which is really the big hot button issue of today. And I think that there's two big issues here. One is the trans athletes, and the other is the minors with gender affirming care. So I think with a couple of these questions I want to highlight. I say require trans athletes that compete on teams that match the sex they were assigned at birth. This is a pretty nebulous one for me. I think that there's definitely a pre and post puberty argument. I think that I feel is very relevant, even if you have hormone replacement therapy after you've had your muscle development as a male going through puberty. It's just the data has shown that you are going to be stronger, right? I don't think that is fair to women who were born female at birth. I don't know the science enough as far as someone that has gone through hormone therapy before they've had a full muscular development. There's also arguments to be made about what level of sports is competitive versus social, right? I think this is a really important distinction that is not made. I think there are some people who, when they're competing at the Olympics, when they're competing professionally, right, for something that is their life, their dedication, it matters a little bit more the nuance on performance and not how you look or feel, what bathing suit you wear, right? I think as we look at less competitive leagues, I think the issue gets a lot less strict. And I think it's important to recognize that how much of team sports is a social aspect that we're trying to compete with and be with other people. And that's again, have your feelings on it, but let's recognize the multifacetedness of sports participation. Um, I really don't like any of the laws that penalize medical professionals. I really, really don't like this. This relates to abortion. This relates to gender affirming care. The argument from the right is these people want to make money. I see this all the time on Twitter. Oh, doctors, they are selling this surgery so that they can sell it to minors and make money. I would love to see someone show that. I really don't think that there are these quack doctors who are out there saying, hey, I'm going to do this for money. All the doctors I've seen really, really care about their patients, particularly in these areas where they are oftentimes taking professional legal risks to do something that they feel is right. I don't think that trying to criminalize people who we entrust with our health is ever a smart way to go. They are people who are supposed to be more qualified than any of us when it comes to these issues. There's no realm in which I support that. That being said, I do have some reservations about minor transition. I've followed the detransitioner movement. I've also followed people who have positively transitioned. And the thing that's really hard about it is to what degree is that decision reversible, right? And to what degree is a minor capable of understanding what they want for the rest of their lives? We make it hard for someone to get a tattoo under 18. I strongly believe in not letting minors get guns. I think we should raise the age of owning a gun to 25. Within the criminal justice system, again, an area I really support is that we believe that the brain is still not developed until 24. So when you try someone as an adult, right, are we saying that someone who is young enough to decide what gender they want to be for the rest of their life and make a very momentous decision of surgery, that same person then is also minor when it comes to a crime they commit? There's a lot of inconsistency around the logic there as to what decision a minor is allowed to make. And I'm not saying that I have a one size fits all answer. I'm not. And that's actually kind of what I'm arguing against, is that there are people who say this can never be the case, and there are people that saying this always has to be the case. And obviously, that's how laws work. A lot of times we set an age, and it's kind of an arbitrary age, but it's one that we just decide is the best medium we have. But I do think that there needs to be a really in-depth discussion about how and when we okay that. I don't think we should make it illegal. I really don't think penalizing doctors makes any sense. I don't think that makes it transphobic to say, hey, I think there needs to be more scrutiny on when people under 18 get gender affirming care. Um, Public bathrooms are assigned at birth. I don't understand this at all. If you look at a transgender person, they look a lot of times, you could not recognize them from their gender assigned at birth. So it'd be weirder to see someone who is a woman go into a men's bathroom because they say I was born a man. Or be like, what are you doing here? This one, that logic makes no sense to me. And then to make it illegal for public schools to teach gender identity in elementary schools. On principle, I disagree with this. I think gender identity is a very broad phrase. I don't know what that means, and I'm in general very opposed to using any broad phrase to make something legal. Because if you have a broad phrase, then the discretion, so to speak, how you interpret it, is up to people who I don't necessarily trust. So I have seen things that make me uncomfortable on both ends, conservative and liberal, as to what we teach our kids. I think a lot of times people who are less qualified in bias and socialization will get teaching roles and take a little bit too much liberty with what they feel that they're able to teach kids and what they feel is the right thing to teach kids. And I've definitely seen some things. I met a woman who was a school therapist, and she thought it was cute that there was something called a homie kiss, where all the boys in the middle school had to kiss their best friend before they graduated. And I was like, if you flipped the rule on that and it was like I have to kiss a girl before graduating, you would be like, that's terrible to have social sexual pressure to do something, but because it's gay, all of a sudden it's cute. So, you know, I don't think that it's very important to consider where bias comes into social equality when it comes to young children's formation, but that question and that concept is way too broad for me to really feel like I have a strong answer on it. I do feel like we should not have teachers trying to socialize kids in a lot of respects. In the same respect, a lot of kids' lives are spent at the school, and socialization is going to happen naturally. A parent just can't take a back seat if someone is bullying a boy that is feminine presenting, right? Their job is to protect that kid. So I don't know that that question has any meaningful answer in its current phrasing, but I do again think that nuance is the key here, and we can't be throwing around transphobic as easily as I've seen, and we also need to not be shutting down nuance on trans issues as easily as I've seen it. All right, that went on a little longer than expected. I hope it wasn't too boring. Again, I just want to always present facts before having discussions, and I really hope that you all do the same. Again, leave me comments, things I missed, things I might have gotten wrong. We're only ever going to solve issues as a society by having discussions, not by having echo chambers. So, appreciate you guys listening, and definitely let me know your thoughts.